Welcome to The Business Coach, a show in which you out to help entrepreneurs better their businesses. My name is Ian Dennis, and tonight on the show I'm going to be having a conversation that's out to literally show solutions during this COVID-19 season. I'm going to be interacting with Mark Kaigwa, the founder of Nendo, a company that's literally synonymous with the digital space. But before I get to engage with Mark, here's a brief bio of Mark Kaigwa. Mark Kaigwa is the founder of Nendo, a digital growth consultancy firm providing marketing, research, strategy, and consulting. We explore Nendo's research titled Impact of COVID-19 on Consumers and Corporates in Kenyans, how needs, expectations, and behaviors adapt in the present and future for Silicon Savannah. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Ian, how are you?
I'm quite well. I'm seeing COVID has brought about some beards on you.
It's necessary, I've started some beard care and a regimen, so I'm keeping up with the times.
It seems that you've been working a lot indoors.
Absolutely. I mean, just working from home, my team and I think within 24 hours of the first announcement, we immediately all started working from home. I think we were perhaps better prepared for it. But it's been COVID-19 has been a real tragedy for the lives lost, and for many of us, the livelihoods and just the grief of what could have been really a really challenging time, and one we're hoping we'll see through.
And speaking about your team, how exactly are you guys coping up during this period? How's the operations like at Nendo?
Look, you'd be surprised. I think we're lucky enough that we still have, despite some clients who naturally have been affected, their sales, their income, their line of business, like our retail clients, we have still some in banking and telecoms, and for them, as you'd imagine, it's a time when they're seeing increasing demand for their services. So the team's been busy. We've been just doing our bit to make sure we not just serve our clients, but also serve really the public and the world. So just looking to adapt to the times and lead other people through this time of digital transformation, with thinking, with plans, with tactics. I mean, just as an example, we've published like a 10 tool guide of how we work remotely, and we've seen some really great feedback on that, because we're not just talking, we're talking from experience.
Yes, and speaking about talking from experience, the company is specialized in research, and you did one particular report that's quite of interest to us for this particular conversation, and the report is on the impact of COVID-19 on consumers and corporates in Kenya. So in this particular report, you've analyzed several industries that I'd like us to talk about, and what exactly are going to come out of these particular industries during out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'd like just to start this conversation with the transport industry. Within that particular report, you've mentioned some winners and some losers. We know that the government put in some restriction with regards to movement, just to avoid the pandemic from spreading. Let's say there's no inter-county movement. Matatus right now are restricting the number of people who are going to on board those get into the matatus. So I'd like to literally share out, what do you think are going to be the winners and the losers post this?
Yeah, well, I mean, like you've said, we have this 10-sector report that we made public a couple of weeks ago, and as Nendo, we've been really encouraged with the feedback we've received from that, from just across board, different sectors, society, public sector, private sector, non-profits, people just looking to say, hey, this has given us a way of looking at Kenya in a unique way in terms of digital transformation. I will say as well, it's a free report, so it's available for anybody watching this. They can visit our website, nendo.co.ke/COVID, to get it. Now, I have to start by saying, like you said, there are people who've been really affected by this. We've seen people lose their jobs, others lose their lives, others lose their source of well-being, and some even people who've been healed or recovered from COVID, their bodies have been affected too. So I think we have to say that even as we look at companies who are benefiting from the increasing demand or being challenged because of diminished or disrupted demand, winners or losers, if you like, we've all lost, I think, as a country, as a continent, as a world. So I always like to open with that, because it's just a really important, I think, step to say, even as we look to this. So I think looking at transport, like you've asked, Ian, when we look, for us, we see digital enterprises as having some advantage, because consumer demand is shifting. And what I mean by that is within transport, this idea of delivering. So I would argue that the gentleman or lady who would ride and operate a border, right? So a motorcycle as a courier, or in terms of taxi and ferrying people, they are in a way an essential service. And what I mean by that is that It's not just because of person-to-person movement, but it's actually because they are the ones on which, shopping experiences and location-based experiences that bring things to our homes, apartments, houses, and any dwelling place that we're in. That idea that we are going to adhere to the government directive not to convene, not to go out. So to us, I think in terms of transport, the startup Safe Border, who previously had been ferrying people place to place, the logistics company Sendi, these are some of the ones that we feel benefit at this time. And also some that have inter-county, as you said, movement. So you have an organization like Copia who do e-commerce, particularly in the more rural areas. So instead of me going up country to send or to purchase something, or me buying it here and sending it on a bus, now I can purchase it in that area and it'll be delivered to them through their website. So we have some people experiencing a rise in demand for their services at this time, despite minimized spending. So even if it's not right now, it will happen over time.
All right, but how long do you think this particular demand is going to be? Because consider, okay, let's say the COVID-19 pandemic, some of the government, slows down on some of the restrictions on movement. Do you think such companies, let's say as Sandy and Copia, who do transportation across counties, are going to survive after that pandemic? Or is it just something that can be, unsustainable?
Yeah, look, I think when we look worldwide at what pandemics have done in terms of rewiring consumer behavior and preferences, there's an example, I believe, of swine flu and how that, particularly around the world in more developed economies, led to people using e-commerce more.
You mentioned earlier on about e-commerce, and it's also part of the analysis on your report. And one of the interesting things that you've been seeing, a lot of supermarkets trying to get into partnerships with either the Buddha, other taxi hailing services to help in delivery. We don't have any particular report as of now, but in your particular assumption, do you think there's been an uptick?
Yeah, look, I think for them, the tune that's being played now is one of just adapting to the times. And so, we've seen what the government has described as cessation of movement. Others have described that as a form of lockdown in a sense, which we've seen just different variations of, and even in parts of the city, including Eastleigh, which has announced more recently. So you do have measures which are limiting and restricting the movement of people. Now, for retail, I think that the local kiosks, provided that the supply chain of supplies, food, goods, and produce can still reach them, that has new prominence, right? Just this morning, I went to my local kiosk, not a supermarket, not a big place, and went to just pick up some things for the house, and that's something we're expecting to continue. As far as these large malls and just the large scale shopping that used to take place, definitely some of the more regional supermarket chains or hypermarket or smaller ones, they stand to benefit as well, just being in the neighborhood, and people maybe not being as keen to visit malls, despite the malls having done what I would consider a good job to make shoppers feel safe and just secure their shopper experience. So yeah, to me, I'd say, I think Tuskies have partnered with Sendi more recently. You have Carrefour partnered with Jumia, and Naivas has partnered with Glovo. So you do have these alliances forming that are helping the consumer get the benefit of basically a service that comes to them. They shop online and they get the opportunity to see that shopping cart close, and it visits or somebody bring the supplies to their house. And that's something we can expect to continue. I think that's something which, provided the logistics are there, people can expect more of that because of the convenience element. If there's no delivery fees, or they're waived, or they're actually paid for, then why not? With the exception of some goods, it may actually be a greater convenience.
One of the interesting things that you mentioned is that there's some losers, mostly with regards to e-commerce, and you mentioned malls, supermarkets, and the mama mboga. Interestingly, why exactly is that?
Well, I think I think, as I said, we're seeing disrupted demand for them. That might change, but in some regard, I'd say it's not black and white that someone is a winner or a loser. It's just that demand will fluctuate or will change. So what I'd say is that for example, the stalls downtown in the central business district, it just might not be the same kind of footfall there once was. And even if there is the footfall, it's the spending and the what some people call the purchase intent. I intend to buy. I have the disposable means people are generally, being very rational and sticking to essentials everywhere they can. So that's changed, and that affects them. For the malls, because they get all these tenants expecting a good deal of footfall to come back, and people just aren't perhaps either going out like they used to or shopping like they used to with their discretionary income. So that's why we'd highlighted some of them. Some are doing what they can to shift and ensure that they can meet different types of demand out there. But it's still quite a challenge. I'd say for the Mamamboga, if you're in some of these counties where there's restricted movement, there's obviously the curfew as well, then just when you get your supplies and also your means, and this is fresh produce, you can't keep it for that many days, you don't have cold storage, so those challenges I'm expecting on the supply chain could have an impact on the Mamamboga as well, and certainly even the kiosk too.
All right, so on that particular note, you're going to take a short commercial break, but you can actually make your contribution in this conversation through our social media handles which are running below the screen, hashtag KTN Business Coach. So don't touch that dial, but keep it right here on the Business Coach, where we help entrepreneurs better their businesses.